Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep. What company do you keep?
Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it. Well, welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live talk show. I am Sherelle Higgins. I am your favorite co-host. As you can see, Sharon is not here with me today. Sharon is traveling, and I have a very special co-host with me. My wonderful and fine husband, James Higgins, is here to help me kick off this discussion about marriage and the truth about marriage. And I thought it was timely that we have this show today because we just recently celebrated our 27th wedding anniversary, and also we are going to an anniversary party today after we leave the show, and that couple is celebrating 10 years of marriage. And ironically, it's my parents' 40th anniversary today, and my grandparents, before my grandmother died, was married for 73 years. And so we have, and my husband's family, parents were married for 40, 50 plus years. And so we have some examples of what to do and what not to do. And so we're going to talk about that in the next hour. We also have our line up 833-202-TALK in the event that you want to call in and ask us questions. And also we're going to ask our audience if they could log into listenvisionlive.com so that they can see the show in its entirety, and also help us with our ratings. Which, by the way, our ratings are extremely well, and we want to keep that going each week. And so last week I was out because my son plays soccer, as you know, and so whenever there's a conflict between the show and watching him play soccer, I'm going to go watch him play soccer because we only have 2 more years to watch him play soccer. And then if he chooses to play in college, which if he gets a scholarship I'm going to choose for him, we'll be going to watch him play some of his games in college. So with all of that said, I'd like to kick off this show with reading 2 scriptures to you. One is Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord. And so, of course, I thought that was a very timely scripture for today. And then also 1 Corinthians 7:3. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. And so those scriptures, I think, are very timely because, you know, we go into this marriage thing based off of what we know is going to happen with the wedding. And so we don't really tend to think beyond the wedding. We just know, particularly as women, we just think about us being a beautiful bride, walking down the aisle, kind of, you know, having our friends and family there cheering us on. And then we think about the costly reception and, you know, what a great day that's going to be. And so we plan for an entire year for a few-hour event, but what we don't plan for is a lifetime of being with somebody. And so we tend to kind of let that thing happen as it happened, and then when it's not happening the way that we would like for it to happen, then we are all in our feelings about that. So before, let me introduce you again to my husband, James Higgins. I call him Jim, Babe. You know, he has all sorts of names. Some of y'all know him as Garfield and all of that. But before we get started with that, I'm going to ask our engineer to play a song that I'm sure you'll recognize. Okay. So that didn't last long. So that is Let's Get Married by Jagged Edge. And so I thought that was very timely, just a great intro into kicking this off. So, Jim, since I've already introduced you, and most people already know who you are, I'm going to give you the pleasure of saying how we met. Because, of course, whenever you start talking about how we met, he has a version of the story, and I have a version of a story. But I'm going to let him tell y'all his version of the story.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jim Higgins, as Sherelle said. I'm from Woodbridge, Virginia. Went to Virginia State University in 1982. Was down there for a couple years, and Sherelle came in the class of '84. And it was well into the semester before I actually had seen her or realized who she was. And I didn't know her at all, and I told my college roommate, like, that's the one right there. But I don't know her, and I got to figure out how I got to meet her. And so I, came up with a plan. A friend of mine, female, was walking with her, and I was like, okay, that's it. So I called the young lady over, and I told her to put a word in for me, and she did. And from there, I ran into her in the cafeteria, and I was walking down into the cafeteria, and I heard my friend tell her, that's him, as I walked by. And I was like, cool, I'm in there now.
That's all it took for you to be in there?
Yeah, that's all it took. I'm good now. And so I went into the cafeteria and sat down. Me and my friends, we used to sit at a table closer to where everybody had to come get the cutlery. And sooner or later, Sherelle walked by, and we made eye contact, and, the rest was history from there.
Yes, and that's close to the version of the story that I'm going to tell.
That's the clean version.
And yes, he did. A friend of ours who went to Virginia State, her name was Rion, introduced us. And she kept telling me for days that there was this fine guy on campus who wanted to meet me. And I had not seen Jim at that point. And so the plan was to meet in the cafeteria for a few days. And each time we went into the cafeteria, he wasn't there. And then finally, one day, he was there. And she was like, there he is over there. And I looked across the room, and he had on an Argyle sweater that was gray, black, and white, and some black jeans. And yes, I remember that from 34 years ago. And when I looked across and saw him, I was like, oh, yeah, he is fine. Okay, well, let me go get some silverware so I can get to meet him. And so that's how we met in Jones Dining Hall on the campus of Virginia State University in 1984. And we've been together ever since. So, as the Lord says, he who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord. And so I am your favor from the Lord. And so Jim and I dated for about 7 years before we got married. And during those 7 years, that gave us the opportunity to both graduate from college, gave us an opportunity to live together for a little while, and then we decided to get married. And, as in most weddings, the female usually plans most of the events associated with the wedding, but Jim was insistent that we use this song for our dance. Oh, no, that Conrad sang, right? Mm-hmm. He had Conrad, and many of you all probably know Conrad, a really good friend of ours, sang this song by Stevie Wonder. And that's A Ribbon in the Sky. Mm-hmm. And so, And for whatever reasons, he had that song all picked out. And I'm a guess because when he looked across the room and saw me, he thought I was the ribbon in the sky for his love.
No doubt, no doubt.
Okay, I'm making that part up, but we're going to go with it.
We'll go with it. The story behind the song at the wedding is pretty funny, though. We had my bachelor party the night before the wedding, and it was a long night, and we woke up, and Conrad was like, "Hey, man, I need you to go to Giant." I was like, he went hard, we went hard, and his voice was raspy, and, ribbon in the sky, that's a ribbon in the sky for our love.
Sing it, babe.
You have to hit some high notes there.
Right,
I was
right.
like, oh, man. So I went and got the whole wedding party, McDonald's, and went to Giant and got the lemon or the lime or whatever is needed for singers to prep their voice for the wedding. So he pulled it off, and it was a hit, as usual.
Yes, of course. And so in our early days of marriage, Jim and I didn't have any kids. And back then I was convinced that I was not going to have any kids. And so I think we were married about 6 years before we had a child. And during those 6 years, we took the opportunity to really get to know each other. Even though at this point we had been together several years, but it's very different kind of dating on campus and being college sweethearts to actually living together and planning to spend the rest of your life together.
That's a transition.
Yes, that's definitely a transition.
That's a transition in your life that you don't plan for. It's a leap of faith.
It really is.
It's a leap of faith.
It really is. And so during that time, we have a caller. I'm going to take it in a second. But during that time, we spent a lot of time together. We spent a lot of time traveling and just kind of really getting to know each other and really seeing if this is who we really wanted to spend the rest of our lives with each other. And so I'm going to take this call because it would be rude to keep them on hold. So hold on. I can't see that good without my glasses on. I got on one contact, though, so I can see out that. Hello, caller. Hello. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on here. So anyway, I think I hung up on them. I'm gonna try this again. Okay, so we spent a lot of time traveling. We went to Hawaii. We went on a cruise. It was a family cruise. We went to where else did we go? We went on about 3 cruises, and a lot of islands during that time. We went to Hawaii to visit Jarvis. We went upstate New York. So we got in some time together. We really vacationed well with our friends and family, and again, while we were trying to find ourselves and realize which direction we were going. So we got it all out of our system, I could say, pretty much. Yes, I'm gonna try to take this call again. Hello, caller. I don't know what's going on with that. I ain't fooling with that. Anyway, and so in our early years, it's not always easy. The first couple years you get married, you're in that blissful honeymoon stage, and you're really trying to figure out, what this marriage thing is all about. And so we are like, we are like every other couple who initially get married. We really had to figure out what that balance was. We had to figure out, it's interesting that how opposites attract. And so Jim and I are very, we have a lot of things in common, but we're also opposites. And so when it comes down to, how we live, what our career choices are. I'm very ambitious, and I'm a go-getter. Jim's very laid back, and he's the type of person who can work on one job for the rest of his life. Me, not so much. I move around quite a bit, and so in some relationships that just doesn't work. People struggle with that. And, there are times when, one of us was making more money than the other. And so in some instances, that's also a problem in a relationship. And it's usually more of a problem for a man for his woman to make more money than him. But I will tell you that Jim's philosophy has always been, as long as you bringing it home,
It's going to the bank. And I think in the early years, that I know a lot, what we didn't have to deal with or contend with is we didn't have any kids at the time. So I can only imagine, what the struggle is for a family who's trying to figure that out and raise kids at the same time, because the responsibilities, were never discussed prior to that in most marriages. Mm-hmm. So now what? Who does what? Is it the woman's responsibility all the time? Is it the man's? It's funny, though, but a lot of the guys that I know now, they admit to doing most of the cooking in the household. Mm. And we're 50 now, but, were you doing it at 20? When did it become your responsibility, or how did that decision come about? You figure things out along the way. You figure out what works for each couple, and you go with it. And then when you go out into society where it was like, you ain't supposed to be cooking, man. That's the wife's job. Well, do you want to eat? You can sit up there and go outside and argue that with somebody who don't matter. You can come in your house and fix you a steak-um or something.
And when early in our marriage, Jim told me that just because you don't cook don't mean I'm not going to eat. And that was music to my ears, because I don't particularly like to cook. Mm-hmm. I can cook, I just don't like to. I get no enjoyment out of it. And so that could be a point of contention in our marriage. But we've decided, both of us, that we're just not going to let that be a point of contention in our marriage. As he said, he could say that that's a woman's job, and then we bickering every other day about why you not cooking, and I'm steady on the other end saying I'm just not going to be cooking. and then we can end up getting a divorce over some cooking when he cooks just fine, and me and the children, we like when he cook. And so it's all about what you choose to do in your marriage and how you choose to respond to your spouse. And whenever you start hanging your preference on whether or not your spouse loves you or not is, I think, where a lot of couples run into trouble. If you loved me, you would do X, Y, and Z. If you loved me, you would make this call. If you loved me, you would be the one to initiate going to counseling. If you loved me, you would have sex with me every day. And so it's those kinds of things that breaks a marriage, because just because somebody didn't make the call to go to counseling doesn't mean that they don't love you. That just meant that that's not what they wanted to do, or that's not what their strength is, or or they just didn't want to. And at some point we got to respect that's not what it is. And I think, Jim and I, we are very, we're different in some regards, because Sharon is trying to tell me to pick up the phone, but I don't know, I'm pushing the talk button and there's nothing happening. Hello, caller. Hello, Sharon. Can you hear us? Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with the phone, Sharon. Jim and I met Jim when I was 18 years old. And so I'm 52 today, and we grew up together. And a lot of couples just don't make it, because as we grow, priorities change, things, change, how we are, particularly women, we change. We're the complex ones in the relationship. Men are pretty simple in terms of how they go about their lives. And I think part of what we as women have to do is really understand that men think completely different than the way that we think on every topic. And, we can't assume that because they don't think the way we think, that their thoughts are not as important, or that, they don't love us because they don't think the way we think, or they don't do things the way that we do them. So what do you want to say about that?
The other person in your relationship, your spouse, does not complete you. You know, that's, I don't say the myth, but, you know, that's what you heard when you were younger. You know, you hear people on the street talk about, you know, I complete him. Well, no, you compliment him, or I compliment her. That's what I have to say. We've gone to a lot of situations where we've come to a lot of situations where we don't agree, but we agree to disagree. And it doesn't make, you know, me wrong or her wrong. And sometimes we have to shelve it and come back later. And, you know, we have to learn how to deal with how we're going to deal with it later. And it all comes from time. You know, I can't say I could have said that in my 20s or my 30s or even my 40s. I'm 54. You know, I'm still committing to this relationship daily. You know, at one point in your life, you know, your relationship, you commit to it. You know, I'm going to make this work. What do I have to do to make this work? Because every day, you know, there's a challenge, you know, and you have to work it out. And you don't want to sit there and argue all the time, because you can. You know, you can be stubborn about it. Or you can decide, I'm going to make it work. And you move on through life like that. And here we are today.
And, you know, I think some people think that when they're married that they do have to agree on every topic, and that, you know, it's mainly the men who have to agree with the way that the woman thinks. And that's just not so. You know, it's it really does take a lot of growth and development to get to that point that, you know, you just may not agree. You know, I might want to do this, you might want to do that. And if we are doing, you know, both doing, you know, want to do different things, you know, I can't say that if you loved me, you would do it the way I want you to do it. You know, I just don't, you know, think that that's it. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to see if I can get this phone fixed. And then we're going to come right back, and we're going to continue this conversation.
Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle, and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep.
What company do you keep? Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.
Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle, and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep.
What company do you keep? Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it. Welcome
to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle, and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep.
What company do you keep? Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.
Okay, we are back and we have the phone line fixed, and so
right.
we're ready to go. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, how are you all doing?
Hey,
Good.
Sharon,
How are
doing?
you?
Good. Listen, quickly, Jim and Sherelle, I think an appropriate question to kind of tackle is, how did you know that when you all met each other when you were so young, how did you know that he was going to be your husband and she was going to be your wife? And then, Sherelle, if we can talk a little bit about the 4 stages of marriage, I think that would be excellent.
Okay, remind me, I know we talked about this at the conference, but you caught me off guard with that one. So remind me of the 4 stages.
Okay, well, go ahead and answer the other ones, and then we can come back to that.
Okay,
about
so
how did you all know?
Well, I was 18 when I met Jim, so I was really young. And the only thing I went on was fine, right? And I remember my mother always saying that you don't have to worry about what they look like unless you plan on having 8 babies. And so I knew that if I was ever going to have kids, that they would be, that he needed to be fine for me. So that's the only thing I went on. I can't even lie at 18 is that he was fine. That's what I went with. And then as I got to know him, that then played a factor.
And I'll say the same thing. You know, I seen her first. She had no idea I existed, and it was about fine. So I even told my roommate, that's going to be the one. That mug is fine, you know. And again, we made it work. You know, we met each other. We had the same, you know, habits, the same. We like to go out. You know, we were just outgoing. We both had personality, and it was a fit. And so, you know, we just kept going with it. And then when it was time to get out of college, it was like, okay, where are we going with this? Mm-hmm. You know, well, she didn't want to go back to Chicago, and so I'm gonna be up here, so you can come, you know, come get an apartment with me, and from there, you know, I got bamboozled and hoodwinked and led astray, and next thing I know, I was at the altar.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that is because you all met at such a young age, and you were able to sustain it all this time. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to, you know, bore your audience with this, but, you know, there's a lot of research out there about stages of marriage. And one of the ones that I looked at, and you all can talk about either one, there's the romance stage, the disillusionment stage, the misery stage, and then the awakening stage. And so how did you all manage through all of those stages? And I'll hang up and listen to you all.
Fine. That mug is fine.
Okay, so I want to talk about the disillusionment stage because I think that's where people end up getting a divorce, is at the disillusionment stage when they realize that the person that they married is not who they want that person to be. And so I think a lot of couples just don't make it through that stage. And I think, you know, instead of, for Jim and I, instead of us, you know, when we realized that each other are not who we thought we were, we didn't run for divorce. We ran towards each other and said, okay, at this point, this is just who he is. I just got to accept him for who he is. Certain things he just don't like. Certain things he's just not going to do. And I can make it a deal breaker, but why? I mean, when you start, again, I'm taking all of the extreme situations off the table, domestic violence and all of that kind of ignorance. But, you know, you cannot marry somebody and expect that regular life type things are not going to happen. You know, people are going to do all sorts of things. You know, you're going to say some stuff to each other that's going to hurt your feelings. You're not going to understand why he said this, or he's not going to understand why I said that. That kind of stuff is going to happen. I don't care who you with. And so if that's a deal breaker for you, then you might as well not ever get married. You got to know that he might say something to you, and you know that you just don't like. It hurts your feelings. You don't agree with. And so you know, I could be disillusioned into thinking that that's going to change, but in fact, it's not going to change. It's just going to be what it is.
Well, a good relationship is made stronger by adversity. You know, the stresses, the pain, the suffering. You make a decision. Either you're going to run from it or you're going to take it head on. And the best person to take it head on with is your spouse. You can go outside the house and get all types of advice, but when you come home, it's still your spouse who you have to deal with. So some people don't take advice from other people and they internalize it and they have to work it out however they can. Some people go out and they share information with their friends, and you find out it's the same shit, different house. You know, I know, but that's the way it goes. You gotta hear it. You gotta hear it like that. It's the same stuff in a different house, and you know, people are going through it, and you're not the only one. Once you can go out and talk about it, you know, you can maybe make a better decision of your commitment to your relationship.
Let's talk about the romance stage, because I think with the romance stage, I think it evolves, right? When I first met Jim early in our marriage and in our relationship, he wasn't romantic. That just wasn't who he is. He's a lot more romantic now, but romance looks different to me now than it did, you know, back when I was 20 and 30. You know, back when I was 20 and 30, I wanted him to be the type of man who, even though I don't necessarily like flowers and I don't eat candy, but I wanted him to be that type of person who would do those kinds of things, but that just wasn't who he was.
And on the other hand, I knew she didn't like flowers and she didn't like candy, and that was wasting my money, so we had to find something else.
You could have did something else. You could have did something else.
We had to find something else to come up with.
And so, you know, and so what I made a conscious effort to do is I said, you know, this is my man. And if I want romance in this relationship, I need to romance him. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, I need to date him, you know. And so, you know, over the years, you know, I've done a variety of things. I surprised him on a trip to Ireland. He had no idea where we were going till we showed up at the airport and we had a connecting flight. That was his first indicator. You know, for our 25th wedding anniversary, I surprised him and took him to Spain and to Morocco. And so, you know, those are the kinds of things that I'm willing to do to sustain the marriage and to have the romance in the marriage. And, you know, when I see him in the kitchen cooking, which is something I don't like to do, that's very romantic for me. I'm just like, yes. And, you know, just it's the small things, you know, when he opened the car door for me, you know, it's not a requirement that he do so. But when he does, I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm going to keep you around, you know. And then those times when he don't open the door for me, I'll say to him, that's okay, I got it. He'd be like, you better get it. And so, you know, you got to have a lot of fun together. And so, you know, we laugh a lot together because, you know, you just can't always take things so serious.
No, I just said.
Oh, okay. You know, you just can't take everything so serious. And, you know, sometimes, you know, most times he opened the doors for me and sometimes he don't. And so on those times that he don't, I can't then turn around and make that a deal breaker because that's ridiculous. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with me why I can't open the door for myself or, you know, walk on the outside of him on the street. I mean, you know, I've heard all sorts of things as to why people are having struggles in their marriage. And to me, they just sound superficial. You know, for me, it's more about, you know, how does he treat me on a day-to-day basis? And if the good days outweigh the bad days, then, you know, I keep telling them he's stuck like Chuck. And if he leave me, he going to have to take me with him. Because, you know, Jim treats me very well, and that's what the bottom line is. So I want to also talk about, Sharon talked about the delusion. You want to say anything else about the romance stage?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm romantic in my own way, like Sherelle said. I'm not a big planner. She likes to plan, surprise with trips. I couldn't surprise her anyway. She knows everything. She's always, where you doing? Where you going? How much does that cost? Why does it cost so much? And I just, even if I tried to skim a little extra off the top, she'd be like, hey, that you $20 over, so I don't even try that anymore. I would have to just come clean. I'd be, hey, look, I'm planning something. So there goes the surprise right there. So I make up for it by doing other things for her, making her dinner. She works late, she'll come home, food is ready to go. I just make sure, that she has everything she needs and her day's not as stressful when she comes home. With our relationship, I noticed that, going out, I had to work on myself, because there were things that I work in customer service, and I'd be out providing outstanding customer service, but as soon as I walked in the door, I'm looking at the trash is not emptied, somebody didn't do exactly what I said, so I'm just grumpy, running around there, rah, 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 rah. And
yes.
then we had a family meeting, we all sat down, pointed at me, said, you're the bad guy, you're running around here like a shark. I was like, okay, me, really? Same stuff, different house. But, I had to sit back and realize, like, okay, there's something to that. There's something to that. So I had to make myself change and, make the home front a lot more receptible to love.
That's
love.
Wait, say that again, because make the
love.
home front more receptible to love.
Yeah.
And so we each have that responsibility.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, I had to look at myself in the mirror and say, man, I'm going out on the street. I'm opening the door for strangers, because my dad always taught me, hold the door for a woman. Now, here I am. Why shouldn't I do it at home first? Those things. You go out in the street and you find that you may be treating people better than you do your family.
Oh.
But then again, we all know your family can be the first one to you. So, you have to be able to balance that, and bring it home. It doesn't matter. You still bring it home. That's where it starts.
Yeah, and what's that song say? Put that woman first. That's a classic example, out in the street doing whatever you're doing, but when you come home, you're a different person. You feel like, you're the king of the castle and everybody should bow down to you. And when, in fact, that's not necessarily the case. We have to bow down to each other. And sometimes I have to take a back seat and sometimes he has to take a back seat. And so it's all about finding that balance of when somebody needs to take the back seat. One of the other stages Sharon mentioned is misery. If you get married, you got to know that you're going to have some misery, right? Because misery comes with it. There's no way around the misery stage. And that stage doesn't necessarily go away and it's done. It doesn't come through and it's done. You're going to have some miserable days. You're going to have some days where you don't talk to each other. You ideally wouldn't want it that way, but that's reality. You're going to have some days where, I'm a Taurus. And so when I get my behind up on my back, it's tough for me to come around. I'm getting better at it the older I get, but that's just how I cope. When I shut down, I stop talking, and Jim knows that that's never a good thing when that happens. But eventually, I'll come around, and he could very well say, that's the one thing I just don't like about this relationship. And because, this is how you cope, I'm going to make it a deal breaker and make it a point of contention in the marriage. But, he chooses not to, because he knows that when I do come around, I'm going to be back to being the wonderful wife that I've been for the last 27 years. And so misery is going to happen in a marriage. Misery is going to happen in a relationship. He's going to be miserable and you're going to be miserable. And so we have to, just acknowledge that. And I think a lot of women, tend to think that their misery is a lot worse than the man's misery in terms of what they're dealing with us. And, we like, oh, he's this, that, and the other. And we don't ever stop to think that they can say the same thing about us, and that we cause them misery just as well as they cause us misery. And so, if again we can make a deal, we can make the marriage a deal breaker for a variety of topics, and so we just have to decide what those topics are.
And the misery doesn't just come from the home front. You guys could be having a good day, and then you get a phone call, and that could send you both into misery. And how are you going to deal with that too? So misery just doesn't come from the home front. It's outer lining forces that make you stronger. I mean, all the things. It also prepares you for things that you haven't even thought of. But it may come into your family. Wow, I can't even imagine. That's what we say. I can't even imagine. And then next thing you know, you get a phone call, and next thing you know, you're right up in it too. So how do we handle this?
Yeah. So, I tell people all the time, if you married, and if you want to be honest about it, if you go through your marriage and you never once say to yourself, he get on my nerves, or I hate him, or I'm miserable, or he making me miserable, then, you lying. It's just that simple, because those emotions surface one way or the other. And, as the saying goes, you got to go through something to get to something. And we've been through a whole lot of stuff in the past 34 years. But I can tell you that we went through it, and now here we are. We got to it. We're in the awakening stage. We are vibing on a lot of different cylinders. I think, one of the things people say to me often is, two things. One is, how does your husband deal with you having, friendships with other men? And two, how does he handle you and your lifestyle in terms of me hanging out and going here and going there without him? And I will tell you that, number one, I grew up in a family of women, and we've always had male friends that are just friends, and that, he's never had a problem with that. Sometimes I'll be on the phone with other men, we just be cackling it up. He ain't tripping over that. Because surely, if it was something going on, I wouldn't be talking to them in front of him or even introducing him to them, bringing them around, that kind of thing. And so I have a lot of male friends, and, it's just not a problem. And then in terms of me, taking my space and being able to, just kind of hang out without him. Again, it's not an issue. Even when the kids were younger, I traveled for my job, and, he always stepped up and took care of the kids and made sure they were good when I wasn't in the home, and even when I was in the home. And so that's just never a problem. But in a lot of relationships, either the woman has a problem because she's insecure, or the man has a problem because he's insecure about, your spouse or your significant other going out living their life, because you got to have a separate life. You just do. It's healthy for the relationship, and then you have a life together, but that life together should be the majority of your life, and understanding that, the separation to hang out with whoever is going to happen.
So the 4 stages of marriage, romance, disillusionment, misery, and awakening, we have experienced all of that from the beginning.
You've been miserable?
Not miserable in that way. Miserable in a different way.
Okay.
Miserable in a good way. So we have experienced all that through our life, and I think, I know we're in the awakening stage, but I don't think, people used to always ask me, and I try and give advice, what's the main thing about marriage? I say, trust and communication, you got to talk and all that. But I just realized recently that I think maturity trumps all that. Mm-hmm. Because you can still communicate and be immature. You can, yell and get your point across however you want, and that's what you may call communication. But I think maturity trumps it all now. It's like, that awakening light comes on, and you're mature, and you're like, what is life about? I've been with this woman, 15, 20 years. Where am I going? What's out there? let me make what I have going on the best for us and anybody around us. We want to be a couple that, when people hang around us, they don't leave the scene. I'm like, man, I don't like them, man. They crazy. We just flow. And, we like to bring that spirit to everybody around us and open up, because life is short, man. We're realizing that life is short, really, really short. Now we're older and we're seeing younger folk die, So, you decide what life is really about, man. Do you want to still be out there running the streets, playing that game, and, the bewitching hour starts at what time? You know that now. Let me go on up out of here. You can go to happy hour, have your fun and be home by 10 nowadays. Look at that, 10. We can be home by 10. Because, there's nothing good that happens out on these streets after a certain time. So
that's exactly right. And, it's important, we hang out a lot together. We commute to work every day together. We commute home every day together. So the most part, the only time that we're generally not together is when we are actually physically at work. That's many days. And then, then we have our separate, things going on. Somebody on Facebook says, how you bring it back together? Is it more so one gives in easier than the other? I would say absolutely, because, that's just the way that it is. It's always going to be one person. And if you're the person that always gives in, don't worry about it. You got to decide what's important to you. Is it more important, to you that, you maintain this relationship and, this is just something you have to do? Or is it more important to you that you try to change the other person to give in? I promise you, if you try to change them, it's just not going to work.
One of the, a good bit of advice I got from a mentor about 20 or so years ago. I used to come into work and be like upset or uptight about something that happened the night before. And this guy was always even keel, and I'd be like, man, how come you don't know? I don't never see you uptight. You act like nothing goes on in your house. Oh, plenty goes on in my house. But I said, well, how come you don't come in here and talk about it? He said, well, I'm going to do what I was going to do anyway. Mm-hmm. I don't hold anybody else responsible for something I think they should do. And if I'm just sitting there and if I was by myself, would I have gotten up and did it? Yes, I would have. So he doesn't hold that against anybody else for not doing something that he thinks they should do, and he would just do it anyway because it was less stressful for him. Mm-hmm. Let me just go ahead and do this anyway. I don't care that, I come through the kitchen, there's a cup on the counter, I would pick it up anyway. And some people, just be adamant about whoever put this cup down here is going to come down here and get it. And then, I didn't put it down here. Why don't you just move? Because I didn't put it down here. Mm-hmm. Whoever put it down here. You could have just went ahead and did it by then and been on your way. And you could politely mention it to the next person the next time. Hey, the next time you leave this cup here, no. You can just ask them, can you, not leave the cup on the counter?
Right, exactly. So, people argue about that kind of stuff. People argue about socks on the floor, all sorts of things. I saw a quote that showed up on one of my Facebook memories today, which I thought was very timely. And it said, marriage is not a place to stand up for your rights. That was just so very timely because it's really not a place to stand up for your rights.
Right. draw the line in the sand, and next thing is out on the curb somewhere.
Exactly. And the other thing too is friends, right? If you have people in your circle rooting for you to get a divorce, if I was you, I wouldn't put up with that. If I was you, I would leave him or her. Get them out your circle. Those are not the type of people you want in your circle. You want people in your circle who are going to root you on. And I could tell you that Jim and I have had people in our circle since day one that's been rooting us on, been cheering us on, and, they put us up on a pedestal in terms of our relationship. But that's very interesting. I told Jim a couple weeks ago, I said, we must have something really special because people act as if what we do in terms of our relationship can't be repeated. And it certainly is being repeated in a lot of different instances. I can tell you, I know a whole lot of couples from Virginia State who've been together just as long as we've been together, been married just as long as we've been together. And they're doing it too. And so, what we're doing is not unique. By no stretch of the imagination, but what is unique is our commitment to each other. We're just committed to each other. We refuse to let the kids come between us. Our kids know that. We don't necessarily always agree on parenting styles or how we're going to handle a certain situation, but that's okay. We don't need to always agree on that. Whoever is the first one out the box to discipline, that's the way it's going down. And so we don't worry about that. We try, we go above and beyond to stay connected and to make sure that our kids see what a loving relationship is supposed to be like. We make sure that our kids know that we're Team Higgins, regardless as to what's going on. We're Team Higgins. And so, it's just so important to always show your kids where your commitment lies.
Mm-hmm. I heard a quote this weekend, and it said, "They see our glory, but they don't know our story."
Oh, say it.
And it's I've seen a quote on Facebook a couple weeks ago, and they said, "Man, you guys are always together." And I looked at Sherelle, and I was like, "Are we always together?" And we started thinking about it, and we spent a lot of time together. Like this past week, we came out the closet 3 times this week, and we had the same color coordinations on. Just 3 different days. Just I go in red and white, and she comes out red and white. Next day, blue and white, and next day, black and white. And it's like, you need to stop hanging around me so much.
And ladies, let me just tell you, whatever your man think is fine, that's what you need to be wearing. That's how you need to be looking, right? Because you want to make sure that when you go out in the street, that he's looking at you. Now, that's not to say he ain't gonna look at somebody else, because that would be ignorant to think that he's not gonna, some other fine lady ain't gonna catch his eye, and that's fine. But you want him to know that you take your appearance very seriously, and that you're not going to be at the Walmart with a bag, a plastic bag on your head, or in your pajamas. I was joking with Jim the other day. We was going to take the boy somewhere, and I had on this granny house coat, and I said, "Do I need to change clothes?" He was like, "Oh, absolutely."
Yes, indeed.
And so, and it's the same thing for the men, men, make yourself appealing to your woman. She gonna see some other guys out in the street who might be fine. I think The Rock is fine. I ain't gonna see him in the street probably, but he fine to me. But he ain't finding in Jim as far as I'm concerned, but he's still a good looking man. And, me and the kids, we always tease Jim about some of his choices in clothes. And so, we had to, just separate his clothes out and be like, this the stuff you wear when you with me. This stuff over here you wear to work. Don't ever wear that if you're going to be seen with me. And it's all good, right? Because you got to be able to have fun with it, too, and not take everything so serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I work my way through the day. I may, like you said, I know. I'm sorry. I say to myself, when I'm out on the street, I'll see a fine woman. I'll be like, man, she's fine. But she ain't finer than my girl, though.
Yes.
That's the way I keep myself grounded. I go shopping for Sherelle. Well, I'm not going to go shopping for Sherelle. I'll be out, and I'll see stuff that I like, because I know her style, and I know what I like to see her in. And she doesn't do a lot of shopping. She doesn't like the bargain bin where you have to dig through stuff. I can walk by and outside of a store, glance in, and see if I think something, that will, spark her curiosity in her wardrobe. So I'll say, hey, you may need to come over here and take a look at this, because I'm just out and about. So.
Yeah, I love the fact that he picked out a lot of my clothes, because, like he said, I don't like to shop, but I like to look good. And so I like to have a lot of clothes, and I do have a lot of clothes. And a lot of the clothes that I have, Jim picked out or had some participation in it. And so that really works well. So here we are. This hour has gone by so quickly. I just want to say this in closing. No, I don't mind if you inbox me. Somebody's asking if they can inbox me. Oh, absolutely. You know, I'm ready to share whatever I need to share. Actually, somebody inboxed me about a week ago and told me that I saved their marriage based off a conversation I had with them. And so, you know, I'm all about, you know, uplifting and trying to help people, you know, move to the next stage in their marriage and get beyond that misery stage or get beyond that disillusionment stage, because once you get beyond it, life is great. So with that being said, Jim, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so thank you all for tuning in yet again. We will be back here next Sunday. Sharon and I both will be here next week. And we thank you all for your support. And we say tune in at 3 o'clock next week.
Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It.